Admin PM from Autumn. I don't think you understand how brainwashing works. You see, unlike trader objects, which are suggestions, brainwashed objects are required to be followed. I'm assuming that you didn't want to ERP under most circumstances. This is okay. But your character resisting while brainwashed is a grievous role-playing failure. So I'm going to give you a chance here. Either follow your directives and don't resist, or eat a ban. Between banging and banning, I think I'll take the latter. Content warning, mentions of sexual abuse and trafficking. So this was a few years back in a game I only briefly took part in. Fortunately, it is a short story, but I feel like it fits the description of horrible things happening in what should be a nice game. I was playing with my fiancé in a game DM'd by my friend. We were playing online as we lived very far from each other, and the DM invited a friend of his that neither my fiancé nor I had ever met in person. My fiancé had played Ravenloft with him, and I had taken part in a handful of one-shots, and I'll just say, our playstyles don't really mesh. It was usually okay, and we just let it go. This game was the last time my fiancé and I ever played with him. It was a Pathfinder game. He was playing a homebrewed sorcerer that was a mix of bloodlines. I don't recall which ones, with all the points in charisma and persuasion, and he was very pretty. Basically, he wanted to be someone who was supernaturally alluring, and he was big on charming people. We were tasked with going into some big bad's castle, dealing with the big bad, and rescuing some children who had been taken from the village. The whole thing went totally normal, and we make it through with no issue. I'm a newish player, and feeling like we're these great heroes, and then this guy goes and wrecks it by suddenly suggesting we don't return the children to their families. Why? Because he thinks the children are beautiful. Alright, give me a... what the Yes, FBI? Yes, this is it right here. Yep, that's him. Okay, yep. Alright, thank you. Anyway, this is where he tells us his clan of that supernaturally alluring bloodline is some sort of sex cult, because of course they are. And he is always looking for beautiful people to take back to their lair. I did not ask him to elaborate. Fiancé and I just insisted we take them home and complete the quest as asked. He decided to ask the kids what they wanted, and the GM, of course, had the children ask to go home. Thankfully, there was no pushback, but I told the GM I wasn't interested in playing with Mr. Steele's children for sex cults, then we bowed out of the game. It isn't really a dramatic story, but I've been lurking here, and after reading about 20 horror stories about sex abuse situations, I thought I'd throw it on the pile of weird sexual D&D encounters. There is a very large part of me that wishes the DM just had the kids go all children of the corn and eat this guy or something, but, well, that didn't happen. I think the real correct response would be to, call the FBI, because, God, what the A relatively tame story compared to the others that I've posted, but it's still annoying to me. I recently concluded a short campaign with a new group of players and a DM that I've only played with a couple of times before. The day after, me and the DM were hanging out as we live in the same building, and we're talking about what we thought of the aforementioned campaign. At first, the conversation is pretty casual, discussing likes and dislikes of the new setting, etc. After a while though, he starts getting upset, saying things like how I don't really do anything, I was way too quiet during the sessions, and so on. This is when I explained to him that yes, I am aware I was kind of quiet, but that is because I didn't know the other players, and I've always struggled socially. Like, once I get to know someone, I get a lot more talkative, but with people that I barely know, much more shy. Add to that the rest of the players were already friends from before, so I was the odd one out. This isn't news to the DM, we've known each other for years, so he's aware of my personality. And also, seeing how I was one of the more experienced players, I didn't want to take over too much from the others. I wanted them to have the chance to explore the system and setting without me taking the reins. The DM does not think these explanations are acceptable. He says that in all of the times we've played together, he's been bothered by how little I interact with NPCs and the etc. Now, I think I've been very polite, seeing as he was berating me, but when he told me that he's always been bothered by this apparent flaw in my personality, that's where I get a little upset. So I start listing off all the characters that I've created, about 4 to 5, that were all intended to be social and outgoing, but ended up being run over by the rest of the party and the various DMs that ran those games. There was the Bard, that was always shoved to the back of the line, both by PCs and the DM as soon as he even attempted to speak. I don't think I was ever even allowed to roll any sort of charisma check because of all my attempts being interrupted. There was the Wizard, whose high persuasion didn't matter because, oops, the DM, who was well aware of the fact that I intended on creating a face man, forgot to tell me that in this world, my character's race was considered disgusting and inherently criminal by everybody. This also went directly against the description of the race that he sent out during character creation. There was this fighter/rogue with a crazy charisma modifier that was always interrupted by other PCs. And when I tried to bring it up to the group out of character, everyone gave me the classic, "It's what our characters would do" response. When I then brought it up to the DM, their response was something along the lines of, "Well, this other PC is also charismatic, so they can do the talking just as well as you. Don't hog the spotlight." Call me crazy, but I don't think wanting to lead the initial interrogation of a captive NPC is enough to qualify as hogging the spotlight. I go on with this rant for a bit, hoping that maybe this current DM will understand my reluctance to do anything other than play an introverted tank at the moment. Nope, he just gets more upset and dismisses me entirely. This absolutely sucks because I see this all the time. Even more than I see spotlight hogs, I see people who are being pushed out of the spotlight. That's a real RPG horror story to me because there are a lot of people who want to participate in role-playing Dungeons and Dragons, but they're scared or they're nervous, or in this case, they're getting literally bulldozed. Don't do that. I haven't made a video about this yet, but there's a wonderful Ginny D video for more talkative players about letting other players in. And there's another video all about shy players getting into the spotlight. Those two videos pair really well together, and they are great pieces of advice. I'll link them in the cards and the description down below. Anyway, next story. I'm a first-time DM, and I firstly want to mention that I accidentally let this new player get a 9th level spell right out of the gate. It was Duplicate, but as an item with unlimited uses. Yeah, oops. I really should have paid more attention to that, but I was so nervous about everything else, it escaped my notice. I then made the mistake of thinking this player would be responsible with the item, but this player seemed to think he was the main character of the story, and was allowed to do anything he wanted. He wandered off on his own, tried to rob everyone and everything while other players were doing the quests. He got frustrated when I dedicated time to other players or told him that people were watching so he couldn't steal, or there would be consequences. He poured all of his skill points into stealth, persuasion, and sleight of hand, and never rolled under a 20. I swear he did his sheet wrong because he was rolling way too high than should be possible at level 1. Okay, I told him that the item was too powerful and I nerfed it to something more level 1 friendly and asked to see his sheet so I could make sure he did the point allocation correctly. He says sure, but then an hour later tells me, "Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with all the use of dark magic, demons, fortune-telling, curses, and necromancy, so if you could avoid all of it, I'd greatly appreciate it. I've seen the effects of witchcraft in real life, and my mother said she's not comfortable with me playing games with it either." By the way, he is 22 years old. Anyway, please don't have any in your campaign. I want to note that this is only after session 1, and literally the only thing they've encountered at this point is a fortune teller from a pocket dimension. So I prodded at this and asked him what exactly he's uncomfortable with, and he says, "Creepy ladies telling you your fortune who are possessed by demons is real life stuff." Firstly, this fortune teller is an ASMR, you absolute empty-headed twat, and secondly, come on, this is not real life stuff, and I'm not going to cater to a delusion. This is a fantasy game. I'm putting fantasy in my fantasy game. You can't cut out the magic. He suggested that I write all the magic to be portrayed as evil. He suggested, and I quote, "Maybe you could make it so that if someone is casting a familiar to say something like, 'She, our wizard, conjures the familiar out of the dark abyss where everything has gone to die using her black magic.'" Lol, sorry, what? This guy thought it was reasonable of him to ask me to 1. Rewrite my entire campaign to include no demons, curses, witches, fortune tellers, necromancers, or undead creatures of anything vaguely heaven or hell-like. 2. Force me to make another player's character evil because he thinks magic is real and evil, and therefore the story has to reflect his feelings on the subject. 3. Allow him to dictate to the other players what races they could be or couldn't be, because no tieflings are allowed to this guy. Needless to say, I told him I'm not getting rid of half the stuff in D&D to accommodate him, and if he's uncomfortable with that, maybe he should play something else. He luckily agreed and dropped out. I feel bad because I don't think I did a good job of establishing boundaries, but like, he joined a D&D game not knowing there was witches and demons? I think maybe he was pissed I didn't let him do whatever he wanted by nerfing his items, so he used his religious thing as an excuse, but I don't know, I doubt that. I feel kinda bad about it, but at the same time, he was very difficult to work with, very unaware of how entitled he was being. He demanded a lot of time and effort. I hope the rest of the campaign is better. Yeah, this problem player definitely sucks, but quickly, let me suggest something that might make establishing those boundaries a lot easier. Just ask them what they're not okay with at the get-go. Don't go through every element of your world that might possibly be triggering, because you never know what people are sensitive to or what people dislike for whatever reason. So just ask, hey, what are you not okay with? And then work from there. And yeah, separating from a group that clearly isn't going to work out for you is the best option. The OP chose the best route. I do think it's unreasonable for someone to ask, hey, can you remove all magic in your game and bend player characters so that I'm okay with it? Yeah, it's a lot. At the end of the day, just separating and moving in your separate ways is probably the best option a lot of the time. There are things that you can absolutely bend. Like if someone tells me they're afraid of spiders, I won't include giant spiders in my campaign. Simple as that. Easy peasy. However, if someone's going to say, hey, I don't want player character death, I will suggest that they play a different system or play a different game, because that's something that is going to be part of my campaign and I'm usually not going to budge on. I'm not going to be upset. I'm not going to try to convince them to be okay with player character death. That is their prerogative. That is their choice. It's also my choice to include that in my game. So, we go our separate ways. Easy as that. Alright, I think that's all I have to say for those stories. So, if you guys enjoyed this episode of RPG Horror Stories and you want to let me know, then please do hit that like button. If you want to see more episodes of this series, then please do hit that subscribe button. And finally, if you want to leave your own thoughts or stories, go down to the comments down below. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.